Welcome back, you guys. Welcome back. This is Wicked Raider 22 coming to you with another episode, another update on our journey through Raid Shadow Legends. As you guys can see, oh, my favorite button is up on us again. It is almost time for a clan versus clan. 10 hours, 19 minutes away. Cannot wait. This should absolutely get better every single time that we go through. But you can tell by the video, there are actually a few of my champions that I want to talk about. The one thing that I've noticed, guys, is as you're going through and you're starting to collect your champions, you will eventually come to a game changer. So the question is for you, who or which of the many champions, over 1,000, are going to come in and change the way you play? Now, disclaimer, I have not used all of these champions on this particular account, but the champion that I would like to talk about really quickly with you is a champion that I was able to earn on my personal accounts. And I am talking about no other than Dur the Hungerer. I know, I know. You don't hear very much. And I think Dur is a girl. I'm gonna go with it because I always say she, but we'll see. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. But just looking, do you see the aesthetics? Look at the arms. Like, how can you not? Look at this. As we are turning, we are moving, keys and all, flexion of the back. You cannot beat this. This is one champion. As I pull them, one of my first epics, I want to say Dur may have been the second or third epic that I pulled. And for a little bit, I did not equip this champion. If you are looking for a reviver, if you are looking for what can inevitably be a game changer, especially if you are early game. Guys, how many times does it come down to being able to make one extra move? How many times would you have actually won the battle if one of your champions had been revived? This is my top reviver currently in the game. Now, is this the only champion that's able to do it? No, but this is a champion that has proven to do it well. The answer is absolutely yes. So let's take a look at the kit. It's always a good one. Starting out with Odious Bulk. So attacks one enemy and has a 30% chance of placing a stun debuff for one turn. Now, I know for me, early game, I did not have a lot of champions that can manipulate the stun. I did not have a lot of champions that used weak. I did not have a lot of champions that used sleep. So those were three attacks in particular. Hex is another one. That early game, when we're used to seeing Galek, Elhain, you're seeing your Kales, you're definitely coming into your Aethels. You're going to pull Sniper, War Priest, all of our regulars. Crusader is another one. When you finally start to pulling your Armigers, you're used to pulling those rare, common, and uncommon champions. But I've noticed where other creators, especially YouTube creators, have had great success with particular epic champions, it comes down to the type of team that you are trying to build. Now, one thing about this champion that I can appreciate, a couple of books will go into her, but overall, not a big deal. Where I got excited was actually coming to the second and the third skill. So this is where it got kind of good. Cannibal Litany is going to place a 30% reflect damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. This was huge for me. Going into different dungeons, thinking about different bosses, it was important to be able to reflect that damage. There's also a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 1 turn. So again, we get the all. Then heals all allies by 15% of their max. You gotta be kidding me. Guys, this comes down to a 3-turn cooldown, and look, does not take much. So we are reflecting damage. We have the continuous heal, and it is impacting every single ally that is in that particular battle. But Dur gets better. We come around to hungry for more. And this is when I knew that this champion was going to be it for me. Now, granted, 4-turn cooldown is not always the amount of time. Will be even better if it was a 3. I mean, I couldn't believe it if it was a 2, but I will take this 4-turn cooldown because in the process, still throwing out those debuffs, still adding in those attack points. So it is definitely worth it in the end. But Hunger for More will revive 2 random allies. And I'll be honest, Dur the Hungerer is really good at kicking in this 3rd skill right when the 2nd ally goes down. That's always a big one. I've gotten to so many battles. If you are campaigning, anything that is above the Deadlands, I promise you, the revive comes in handy as you're trying to get through dungeons at lower levels as well. As you're going from level 12, especially 12 to 16, is usually the area where you're going to be rearranging your teams on a more constant basis. It is absolutely worth it. Then you have the aura, increases allied defense in faction crypts by 30%. I have chosen to build this particular champion out, thinking about speed, of course, since all of the attacks are going to have or will be based on since all damage, is based on attacks. It's another area where you definitely want to focus. Now, reviews, guys, reviews speak. And as you can see, everywhere but Hydra is all in green. Even in Faction Wars, I see an emphatic 5, and I can understand why. What do we normally put on this champion? Boom, there it is. Speed and life, keeping that defense percentage in mind and also adding an attack where necessary. If you pull Dur the Hungerer, I would encourage you to definitely think about building out this champion. I have not been disappointed and definitely represented Demon Spawn well. Now, a second champion that I actually pulled right behind Dur the Hungerer. When it comes to epics, another one that I pull, and you guys, let's see, Dakota. We're going to go with Dakota. This particular champion, I'll be honest, I used her for quite a while. And then she turned into food. It's having to make the choices, which I'm probably going to regret. But aesthetically, Champion looks awesome, looks amazing. Kind of reminds me of Marquez, reminds me of Diabolus, for example. So I was feeling that one. We're coming with some good skills and a really awesome passive. Guys, when I tell you I had to think quite a bit and pick between her and Dur because she's an attack champion, I had to make some choices. And of course, they had to be made. And you can already see why this particular champion ended up losing. The books. Oh, guys, this alone. So we have the Mephetic Spines, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of increasing the duration of 2 poison debuffs by 1 turn. Damage is going to be based on attack. One of the areas, can you increase the amount of damage? The answer is yes. There's a 20% increase there. Can I increase the chances of my debuff? Yes, you can add an additional 20% to get this to 50%. But guys, level 9 was a lot. I started thinking about how many times I would have to go in and sacrifice other champions in order to keep this champion moving forward. And as we've said from the very beginning, each time you play, it eventually becomes one of the hardest things you try to do. Now, attack number 2, we have poison. Yes, your poison agonist. Attacks one enemy 3 times. This is pretty nice. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 25% poison sensitivity debuff for 2 turns. This one is nice. For example, if you have Kale on your team, which for a lot of us, it will be the first exposure when it comes to having access to poison at all. There are a couple of other people you will run into. But if you are trying to build a team where you know Having poison or poison sensitivity can be it. This champion may definitely fit your team. Doesn't take nearly the amount of books as that first attack, so this can have a 20% increase added on to get us to the 50%, and it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Wretched Nexus is going to attack 4 times at random. Now, I will be honest. In order for her to get Wretched Nexus in most of the teams where I had her set up, the biggest thing is I will go in and turn this first skill off. So you will see advanced players as they're talking about how a champion performs on a team. And for the longest, I did not realize that you could go in and turn skills on or off. The other thing I had to figure out was the overall value. So how could this help me overall become better at what I was trying to achieve? And what I figured out is there are some attacks that you want your champion to go directly into. This is on a 4-turn cooldown, and you're dealing with the ability to have that hex debuff there. So you're thinking about, what do I need to do, and where's the best place to put a 4-time random attack? The downfall is it is random. It is naturally random. But depending on who else she is teamed up with, I'm telling you guys, your Dakota can definitely become worth it. Now, the passive is pretty nice. Bloodborne. Whenever either this champion or an ally lands a critical hit on an enemy under a hex debuff, that's the condition, has a 10% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on the enemy for 1 turn. 5%, which you can get up to 20%, is still not going to be the most impressive, especially when I'm thinking about so many other champions that at this point you probably would have earned that poison debuff with as one of their natural skills. Other good thing is, though, she is an ally that does increase speed by 15%. So the ability in there, the possibilities for her can be endless. She's not coming in as your slowest champion by far, starting off at 97. Crit damage is already at 50%, of course. And then for the HP, for base, 12,555 is not bad. So it's definitely one of those areas as far as an epic that has really impacted my game. I would say from Demon Spawn, those two are the biggest. Dur by far being one that wasn't expected, but definitely was appreciated. Now, there are a couple of other areas, and I want to say the other popular area that many of us will dive into first will be in the Dark Elf area. And I'm trying to see, because I've heard of several of these particular champions, but I haven't had a chance to actually go to these champions. So I've got to figure out where my other people are, because we've been getting pretty lucky. And I'll show you what I pulled from shards recently as well. Because now, if you are logging in, and I think login champions are still the same. Once you get to your 30 days, you guys should still earn high Catan. Now, High Catan is one of those. I have gotten her to level 50, 5-star ascended on my personal account. Loved how she looked, of course. Pretty standard for all barbarians there. Her skills are pretty impressive. Now, is she my hardest damage hitter? The answer is no. Does she put in quite a bit of damage? The answer is yes. And if you look at her base speed, guys, her base speed is 104. So not bad at all. Imperial Grace is what she's coming through with. Attacks one enemy, has a 25% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Does take quite a few books. And honestly, I have not received a lot of dupes for this particular champion. So think about it. It's going to take more of an investment of resources and time when you are trying to move an epic champion or a legendary champion and fully ascend them, get them fully booked, fully mastered. So you want to think about, where can this champion fit? So her first attack, not as impressive. Second one, Rally the Horde. Fills the turn meters of all allies by 15%. Do not underestimate this skill. I'll say it again. Do not underestimate this skill. Guys, this becomes important when you have longer battles. There are certain champions that are much better in longer battles than they are in speed runs. So if you're thinking about the difference, for example, of running a team that's led by Deliana and Kale, and I have two additional champions, one may be a support champion, and then I'm trying to figure out who else can be a heavy hitter that's coming in with a good amount of defense. So I want them nice, I want them tanky, but I want them to be able to push the team forward. High Katun, she kind of falls into that category. So easily this champion would fall into that category. Now, Shamanic Lightning is another one. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 15%. Now, that's 50% chance can be increased to a 75% chance. But again, you can get this down to a 4-turn cooldown. You've got to keep in mind the amount of resources that will be going into this particular champion. Last but not least, she's going to hit you with increasing ally speed and all battles by 19%. When it comes to auras, you will notice a lot of them will offer 15, 20, 25%. Some of the champions will elevate up to 40, 60. It just depends on where they've fallen. But keeping in mind, we're talking about epic champions that you are likely to obtain either through logging in, or they're more common shard-wise, or you're just seeing them a lot more often with earlier teams in places like Arena as well. Go over to reviews. Sometimes we look at them, sometimes we don't. She's not my favorite in Spider's Den. I definitely agree there. Not my favorite for Fire Knight's Castle. I can definitely see that one. So in those specialized areas where she's not going to perform well. But take a look. Void Keep, Spirit Keep, Faction Wars. We are nice and in the green. As we're going through the Force Keep, the Magic, skip the Magic. Go to Ice Golem or Minotaur's Labyrinth. We're still in the green. And of course, for Arena, you're going to see her quite a bit in Arena. You are building her for speed and, of course, giving a little bit of support as far as HP, and always looking for that defense percentage. This is a login champion that is definitely worth keeping. So if she fits your team, do not stray away from that one at all. So Barbarian-wise, I want to say she is the only one that I've been able to work with on Barbarian. I think Sacred Order, we've been coming in. Let's see, do we have anybody? There are a lot of people in this category that I definitely would love to get my hands on. But so far, no one in Sacred Order have I had a chance to work with either. And let's check out Banner Lords. Now, Banner Lords is one we just pulled, Chancellor Yasmin. And this is one of my pulls from yesterday, actually. So, Chancellor Yasmin, one of our champions. And so, pulled her overall, looks pretty solid. Fire Knight's Castle, Spider's Den being her lowest area. But Chancellor Yasmin is actually for support. So, first attack, giving you resounding smash. Attacks one enemy, places an extra hit if the target has no active buffs. You can increase that damage by 30%, and damages, of course, based on her attack points. Touch of Vigor is going to heal an ally by 40% of their max HP. This is a big one. Heals by 60% instead if the ally has 50% HP or less. Chancellor Yasmin is one, because I can put this on a 2-turn cooldown, that I like to put in, or that I'm thinking about building out and putting her in as a support. And I'm thinking about if you have her and Dur on a team. Let's say Dur the Hungerer, for example, with that 4-turn cooldown, has not gotten to the point where she's able to revive. So Chancellor Yasmin, you're trying to save this one champion. They aren't dead and down quite yet. She will be a good one to kind of alleviate that champion having to die. She could bring them back by 40% or increase it to 60% if they were low enough. And then, of course, Dur the Hungerer can swoop in and revive those 1 or 2 champions that have already died. Think about supporting your team. What happens if this champion has the ability, but they haven't been given the opportunity to actually go through the cooldowns to use it again? Here we have lulling chance, has a 50% chance of removing all buffs from all enemies. Then places a sleep debuff for 1 turn on all enemies who have active buffs. It's one to think about. You can increase that 50% chance to a 75% chance. And of course, you can bring this down to a 4-turn cooldown. Again, she's going to hit you with the speed in battles by 20%. So Chancellor Yasmin is definitely one of those. If you are running a team that you prefer, for example, if you do not have a shield guard, if you don't have an armor girl, if you haven't pulled someone like Galect or Diabolus, so you're looking for somebody that has a little bit muscle but can still be supportive, she would definitely fall into the category for you as well. Now, let's see some other epics early game. We've kind of rolled through our Talarians. Organ Tribe, you guys know Organ Tribe. I don't think I've pulled very many of these guys at all. That's going to be a no. It's one of those tribes where I'm definitely going to struggle with. Lizardmen is another one. Skinwalkers. Now, here comes Skinwalker. And here is actually one of my most recent pulls. So let's pull Taurus. Taurus is a little bit different. All your Skinwalkers are. So with Taurus, go over to your reviews. And guys, I'll be honest. These numbers don't lie. Not on this one. I mean, for Demon Lord, maybe. But even when I'm going through and thinking of, hey, maybe you'll be using faction wars, and that's kind of iffy as well. This is a champion that I have not been majorly impressed with. I actually began to ascend him, and then I caught myself and I stopped because I realized if I am picking or having to pick between him and a few other epic champions, he was probably not going to be a winner. Now, I want to be careful when it comes to rares and epics. They are much easier to build out, much cheaper resource-wise to build out, but they also tend to receive buffs along the way. So I've heard a lot of creators definitely encourage you to keep a copy, or if you're going to improve a champion, to make sure you really think about, is that improvement going to be worth it? So let's look at the skills. Look at this kid. He has Metabolize, attacks 1 enemy, heals by 20% of the damage inflicted if the target has a poison debuff. Damage is based on, of course, attack and can be increased by 25%. So, okay. We've now seen the poison debuff at least 2 to 3 times just in the epics that we are looking at. So it's not necessarily a debuff that is hard to find attached to champions, but it is a debuff that I want the best champion possible to possess. Next, Tendon Slash attacks 1 enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns. Weaken is an important one. I'm starting to think of crowd control. I need some CC kind of champions. I need some turn meter manipulation. I need some champions that are going to slow the number of attacks that are actually coming my way. Now, you can increase your damage by 15%. You can also increase that debuff or buff by 25%. And then we can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Tendon Slash was okay with me. What kind of caught my attention was actually his 3rd skill, for Toxic Nova. This champion receives damage equal to 99% of their current HP. That's the condition. Be careful about epic and legendary champions. There are a number of them, especially for a beginner. They are very, very conditional. And you have to understand when this champion will be able to perform at his highest level. The other thing you're thinking about when you receive epics at this particular gaming level, we're not at the highest level, so we don't have the best gear. You're also unable to forge the best gear. So you have to be very mindful of where you are using artifacts and also where you are choosing to use things like books as well. So Now, he does place an unkillable buff on this champion for 2 turns. A little selfish. Has an 80% chance of placing 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns. Now, the second and third parts, honestly, the first and third part for Toxic Nova are the most impressive for me. I'm thinking about gameplay. I'm thinking about, as far as this 5% debuff, we can get that up to a 25%, which I'll be a lot more impressed with. I can also say with all of his skills, it's not a huge amount of books, but it is a pretty good investment. And especially when you're trying to get Toxic Nova down to a 4-turn cooldown. His aura is going to increase ally accuracy in factions by 40. HP base level is at 17,000. Speed is at 101, so he's not the slowest person. Starts out with 15 on the accuracy. Working with this champion, having ran him through campaign for a little bit, also having completed a few dungeons. Not the worst epic that I've pulled so far, but not necessarily an epic that I feel the need to keep. And it's kind of hard to say. I understand fully that in order to get a full team of 60 maxed out, mastered out champions, I'm going to have to sacrifice. But I was thinking more so of sacrificing those champions that we're pulling from mystery shards, because there are so many of them, right? But then you pull some epics like this, and I'm tempted to vault them, maybe for later, maybe somewhere in my game it would be worth it. But for now, they've just become the champion that I can step up one level and then perhaps use for something else. So Taurus was our selection when it came down to Skinwalkers. Has not proven to be my most excited, epic, but we'll keep going. As far as orcs are kind of in the same category for me. I don't believe I pulled anybody that I've actually held on to. I take that back. Now, we all know that Shaman, if you started your account recently, Shaman is going to be the support that you should be able to get after your 7-day login. On my newest little play account, I'm actually a couple of days in, I think a day or so away from acquiring her. But Shaman is an interesting support champion. Now, I will tell you this, if you are going into faction wars, which quite a few reviews have been done, campaign and arena, I'm not shocked. What I want to see is how do we love this particular champion when it comes to faction wars. 4.6, exactly what I thought. This is one of those champions that once you're able to get her to your account, I would highly recommend booking this particular champion and holding on. Because, guys, to be honest, most champions in the orc faction, we don't keep them. No one's running them, unless you're hitting the legendary status. But a lot of the rares in this category, quite a few of the commons, uncommons, it's not great. It's just not. So you end up trying to figure out who can I put in, who can add a little support to the team. And there are not a lot of support champions in this particular faction. So if you are getting to the point, you're at the end beginner's game portion, about to kind of mingle into your mid game as far as your dungeons, especially, and you're starting to get into faction wars, you're going to have to break down and build out champions just to run those areas of the game. Let's look at her kit really quickly. Dispelling Blow attacks one enemy and has a 25% chance of removing one random buff from the target. Now, you can, of course, have this 25% chance increase by 10%. We can increase damage by 10% as well. You also have, for the second attack, Exploit Weakness. Attacks one enemy, places a 15% increased critical rate buff on all allies for 2 turns. So the increased critical rate is kind of nice. You can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown. We can increase the damage that's given by 20%. And this is one of those moves where you're thinking about, where am I battle-wise, and when do my teams tend to kind of falter? So I'm thinking about, if I am, for example, working my way through Some of the keeps come to mind. A couple of my campaign bosses, she would definitely be a help in those areas as well. Now, here's a good one. Recall level revives an ally with 50% of their HP. Early game, early game, early game, all day long. This, guys, if it says revive, I would encourage you to hold on to a champion, especially when you are reviving the ally and you are giving them 50% of their HP. You cannot beat that at all, because not only does it give you the opportunity to revive and bring back that champion, they have enough HP left that if they're hit, the goal is for them not to instantly go back down so they can help. She's also going to place a shield buff on the target equal to 20% of the target's HP. So I'm going to shield you. I can get this down to a 5-turn cooldown. I would have been more impressed if you could get it down to a 3 or 4-turn cooldown. So that would have made this one really, really nice. Her aura is going to increase ally defense in faction crypts by 23%. A speed of 106, definitely not the slowest champion we've run into. Crit damage base level is going to be at 50%. You can definitely go in and build a little accuracy for her attacks, but this is a pretty solid kit. It's a pretty solid kit. If you have the beginning account, she can definitely be a game changer for you. Now, another one that we pulled from this category, who actually has played into my personal account pretty well, is Sand Lash Survivor. I had not previously heard a lot of people talk about Sand Lash Survivor. So this is one of those epics built out on defense, which is really, really nice. She's not hard to keep alive. I like to put her next to some of my revivers because number one, a lot of these champions will also include provoke. So they're willing to take the damage. They're able to handle the damage. But if you have a reviver on your team, if you have someone who is throwing out those shields to protect them, it can definitely make it worth it. Sandlash Survivor has the ability to put out some pretty good damage. So for that first attack, Smell Weakness attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 30% chance of placing a provoke debuff on the target for 1 turn if this champion has no debuffs. Always the conditions. Heals by 15% of the damage inflicted if this champion is under any debuff. You're going to realize at a certain point in the game, this any will matter nothing because there's always a buff or a debuff going back and forth the entire battle. And of course, her damage is based on defense. You can increase that damage by 15%. You can also come in and increase the buff and debuff by up to 20%. Endless Sands is going to be attack number 2. Attacks all enemies. I get so excited when I see that. Decreases the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn. Increases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn. So you're attacking all enemies. She comes in and does a nice amount of damage. Since it is defense based, you can add 20% to that and get this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Her passive is kind of nice, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns when any ally's HP drops below 50%. Going back to Dur the Hungerer, for example, always healing and reviving everyone else, but sometimes will neglect themselves. This is a good way to put some additional protection around that champion because they are extremely important to your team. But also places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. So having that shield go up, I protected my allies, and now I'm going to go in and protect myself. You can get this down to a 4-turn cooldown, so it can certainly be worth it for you. In the end, her aura is going to increase ally defense in all battles by 25%. So Sandlash Survivor, if you have not added her, if you happen to pull her, I have decided to definitely keep her around. Currently, I use her in Tag Team Arena for those of us who have made it to level 35 and you've unlocked that area of the game. She runs pretty good on my second or third team. I will kindly, move her and a few others around. If you are adding her to a team, for example, that has an heiress, Elhane, a sniper, if you were putting her next to your reviver, there are a lot of different areas on the team where Sandlash Survivor works extremely, extremely well. So she's one of those champions I was not familiar with before actually pulling her, but extremely glad that I was able to add her to my team. So we've gone through Telariums. We took a look at Galen's pack as well. Started off with this Demon Spawn. I'm trying to think, is there any other area? Let's see. We've already talked about Miscreated Monster as we go through Knight's Revenant. Anybody else we've recently pulled? I don't think so. Oh, let's talk about Doom Priest. Some of you guys may have picked Doom Priest. And I'm going to admit something. I know there are some people who are about to cringe in their seats, just absolutely cringe. I pulled Doom Priest on my personal account. Really excited to get her. Love the little aesthetic, was feeling, the locks and the movements. And I'm like, okay, good support champion. I looked at the reviews. Guys, when I say solid across the board, like 4.9s, 4.8s. And you already know what I'm about to say. I used her as food. I got to the point where, and I'm trying to remember who I was even upgrading, and I have no idea, which makes it even worse. And I promise you guys, I will switch over in another video, and I'll eventually show you guys my personal account as well, just so you can kind of see the progress difference. But I use Doom Priest as food. And I was sitting listening to a video. A couple of minutes later, they started talking about this champion. And I promise you, my heart was so weak. But I was trying to find the love for her, but could not. Here is the skill kit. She does Fate Weave, attacks one enemy. If the hit is critical, places a 15% increased critical rate buff on a random ally for 2 turns. And what I was really looking at is the increased critical rate. I didn't really have a lot of champions that did that, but for some reason, I just was not impressed. Now, the amount of damage that can be done can definitely be increased. So we're looking at 25% increase for that attack. All right. So second skill, Mass Possession, places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. And you can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Again, I understood it. All right, we're going to increase attack, but I have other champions that do the same. And for me, I felt as though they did it better. So maybe it was her passive, Bolster, heals all allies by 7.5% of their HP. That can be a big thing. Removes 1 random debuff from them at the start of this champion's turn. So her passive, in certain instances, in certain cases, and depending on which team you're dealing with, her passive can be a game changer. And for a few people, Doom Priest was the support they needed in order to make it through. She's coming through with the ally speed aura in all battles for 15%. But she was definitely one of those champions where it's not as though the kit wasn't good, but it's the fact that everything she did, I had someone who could probably do it a little bit better. I know. If I pull her again, likely I will definitely keep her, maybe put her in the vault, because I'm pretty sure eventually there's going to be a reason for her to be used. So we've already taken a look at Dark Elves and Undead Horde. I don't believe I had any of these. We had the Defiled Center. Yeah, I can already tell you I have used him already as food. He's an average champion at best. I remember actually when we pulled him, I think in another video we went through Defile Center, but Murderous Craft, so he has a decreased defense debuff. Goes in also with the increased attack. You do, not many books required. I can do that one. Second one was Ripe for Slaughter, getting this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks one enemy, then attacks all enemies, inflicting damage equal to the 15% of their max HP if the first hit kills an enemy. The second hit cannot be critical. There's a lot of conditions on him. And then finally, Corrosive Smog. Attacks all enemies. Damage is going to be increased by 10% for each enemy alive. Stacks up to 100%, and this is on a 5-turn cooldown. I could probably think of some areas where Defile Center would be a bit more impressive, but no. Didn't make it on the other accounts. Did not make it on this account either. So as we're going through looking at champions, you will not see him. Now, as far as dwarves, we always struggle. We don't pull a lot of dwarves. I have not had a chance to work with any of those guys so far. Shadowkin is another one. Just looking at all the epics. Oh, I can tell you about this one. And I'll be honest, I'm gonna say it again. Kunoichi is one of those. I love the aesthetic. I am an anime loving kind of girl. So I was kind of feeling the vibe just a little bit. The numbers are really good overall. I'll be honest. I have people on the team, and yeah, Kunoichi turned into food. She was sacrificed. She was sacrificed in order to be able to move another champion to level 6. It was not the easiest decision, but it was definitely one that had to be made at that point. She is a defense champion, so attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns. I'll be honest, this first attack for Sever Muscle caught my attention because at the time I did not have another weakened champion on my team. She didn't require very many books. I was able to run quite a few dungeons with her as well. I used her for quite some time, but I picked between her and another champion that had a similar skill kit. And so far, I've been pretty happy with that. Now, if you did not pick Kale, for example, as your starting champion, look at her second attack, Poison Piercing. Attacks all enemies and has a 75% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns. Notice if you book her out, you can get the 75% chance up to a 100% chance. You can bring this down to a 4-turn cooldown, and you can go in and add that 15% additional in damage. So, second attack, I was pretty happy with, could not complain. Interpose is going to be the third, places a 15% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Fills this champion's turn meter by 50%. And this can be a big one because a lot of times she will go from interpose back to the second attack instead of the first. And that I did enjoy. You can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown, which is really, really nice. It's coming pretty quickly, especially when you're in those longer battles. Her passive, I also like, Blooded Grit. Places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. This would have been nice if it put a block damage buff on all champions or on this champion and an additional ally. So whenever her HP drops below 50%, then that passive will jump in. Not a bad champion. I have seen a lot of teams that have actually been built around this champion in particular. If I pulled her again, of course, she's an epic. I would likely vault this champion. Even now, with the way my team is set up, I have other champions that can probably do what she does, or they can keep the team going enough that I would likely not notice. But out of Shadowkins, that will be the only champion that I was actually able to come in and kind of give an insight to. No matter what, guys, as you're making choices with your various champions, the biggest thing for you to keep in mind is what kind of team are you building? And of course, what are you planning on doing? Don't forget, clan versus clan is coming up. If you have multi battles, save them, save them, save them. If you are building up on energy, see what other areas of the game you can complete, because that will be very nice. And of course, we'll be back with more. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe for me. We post content Monday through Friday, hitting every morning at 7 a.m. Always waiting for your comments. Hey, this is Wicked Raider 22, and I will talk to you soon.